I was doing over 100 kilometers an hour through a residential neighborhood, and I didn't even know it. The streetlights were just streaks of light flashing past me, one after another, and my brain couldn't make sense of any of it. The mushrooms had kicked in hard. The cocaine was still buzzing through my blood, and I was behind the wheel, completely gone. That's the last thing I remember before the crash. 2 cars, then the corner of someone's house, and then my body flying headfirst through the windshield. That was the night I died. And that was the night everything I thought I knew about life, about myself, about reality, all of it shattered into a million pieces. But to understand what happened that night, you need to understand who I was before it. Because the guy who got into that car wasn't someone you'd want to know. I was 23 years old, and I had already burned through over 50 different jobs. Fired from most of them, walked out of the rest. I'd get into arguments with managers, scream at supervisors, fight with coworkers. I had no education. I dropped out in junior high. I was a runaway. I didn't know what discipline looked like. I didn't know what structure was. Everything I touched fell apart because I was falling apart, and I had been falling apart since I was a baby. My parents divorced when I was 1 year old. Both of them went on to get into their own toxic emotional relationships, and all of that chaos just poured into me. There was no love in my house, no compassion. No one sat me down and said, "Hey, this is how you treat people. This is how you speak to someone. This is how you handle your feelings." It was just yelling and belittling and neglect. I was beaten up, bullied, tormented, and alienated by the people who were supposed to protect me, my own family. And when you grow up like that, when that's all you've ever known, you don't even realize you're broken. You think the world is just cruel, and you become cruel right back. By 23, I was a walking disaster. Drugs, alcohol, women, partying, that was my whole life. I wasn't living, I was escaping. Every single day was about numbing myself, finding the next hit, the next drink, the next distraction. I didn't know what it meant to be conscious. I didn't know what being peaceful felt like. I didn't understand forgiveness or love or even basic kindness. Those words meant nothing to me. I was angry, negative, controlling, toxic, just a human wrecking ball smashing through everything and everyone. That morning, I woke up in the basement suite I was renting, and the first thing on my mind was the weekend. How am I going to enjoy tonight? Who am I going to call? Where's the party? I started imagining my night, the drugs, the drinks, the girls, the chaos, and it all came together exactly like I pictured it. One phone call led to another. Someone said, "Come over." I showed up, and there it was. A bag of mushrooms, maybe 10 grams or more, cocaine on the table, alcohol flowing, marijuana in the air. And I just started chewing on those mushrooms like it was nothing, just shoving them in my mouth, handful after handful. That's the kind of life I was living, a pitiful, reckless, meaningless existence. After a while, I got restless. This isn't enough, I thought. I want more. So I grabbed my keys and got in the car. As soon as I started driving, things went sideways. The streets of my own city, streets I'd driven 1,000 times, suddenly looked foreign. I couldn't remember where I was going. I couldn't recognize anything. And then the lights started, these bright flashes zipping past me on both sides, and I didn't understand that they were streetlights, that I was speeding through a neighborhood at an insane speed. Everything was spinning. My vision was warping. And then, impact. I slammed into 2 parked cars, blacked out, came to for just a second, and my foot was pressed all the way down on the gas. The car launched forward, jumped a curb, drove across someone's front yard, and smashed into the concrete foundation of their house. And just like that, I was ejected head first through the windshield. What happened next is hard to put into words. I was unconscious, but I was aware. There was silence everywhere, complete, total silence. No pain, no suffering, just stillness. And then I could see myself, my body, crushed against the car, half in and half out. My waist was hanging outside the vehicle. My legs were trapped inside. The police, the investigators, the homeowners, They all found my body later on the passenger side of the car. Nobody could understand how I got there, but I know how, because I was outside my body and I could move in and out of it. I felt like my soul needed my body to survive, so I somehow dragged myself across to the passenger side and collapsed there. And then my spirit left again. I was floating near the scene when the ambulance arrived. I could see the paramedics rushing toward me. I could hear them talking, and their words hit me like a punch. "We're losing too much blood. We're losing him." They strapped me to a stretcher and tried to revive me. I watched all of it. I watched them load my broken body into the ambulance. I watched the woman working on me and the guy helping her and the driver up front. I could see it all because the real me, the soul, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, was not inside that body. I was hovering above, watching the ambulance race down the highway toward the hospital. I even left the ambulance at one point and looked at it from the outside. This white box speeding through the night with my shattered body inside. At the hospital, they didn't know if I was going to make it. My leg was broken. My face was swollen beyond recognition. There were shards of glass embedded in my forehead, my neck, my face, my body, everywhere. I was a wreck. But even while they were working on me, even while I was on life support, I could hear things. I could hear phone calls from family members, even though they were far away. I could hear the gasps when people walked into my room. Oh my God. The whispers, the prayers. One by one, people came in, some to say goodbye, some to pray, some who didn't even know which one they were doing. I could hear all of it, and I was aware of all of it, even though my body was lying there lifeless. When they took me into surgery, my spirit followed. I was right there beside my body, watching over it, making sure I stayed alive. And there was a moment, this is where it gets real, when the breathing tube they had put in started choking me. My spirit sensed it. I came back into my body, ripped off my neck brace so I could breathe, and people started screaming. My mom was screaming, nurses were running, doctors didn't know what was happening. But it was me. My spirit came back just long enough to save my body, and then it left again. Then came the moment when my family had to make a decision. Keep me plugged in or let me go. And something inside me, some force, some knowing, told me I had to go somewhere. I had to make a choice of my own. My consciousness left the hospital room. I floated away, out of the building, and I didn't know where I was going. I just felt detached. I looked back at my body and I didn't feel connected to it anymore. It was like looking at a costume I used to wear. That's when something strange happened. I felt pulled towards something, a vortex, a tunnel, a funnel of energy. It grabbed me and I started moving, faster and faster. There were lights everywhere and sounds, not sounds like you hear with your ears, but waves, frequencies, vibrations that I could feel in my entire being. The further I went, the darker it got. Blackness surrounded me from every direction. I started to get nervous. I started asking in my mind, is there ever going to be light? And in that moment I realized I had to let go. I had to stop trying to control it. I had to surrender. And that's when the light appeared. Not like sunlight, not like any light I've ever seen on earth. It was a warmth that surrounded everything, a glow that was everywhere at once. I stopped moving and I was just there, in the middle of this infinite light. And before I could even ask where I was, I felt it. Warmth, compassion, love, empathy, respect, honor, appreciation. It was like every good feeling that exists in the universe washed over me all at once. I felt like I was somewhere I had never been, but at the same time, this was exactly where I was supposed to be. This was home. This was where I came from. There were beings there. I can't tell you they were my grandfather or my cousin or anyone I recognized by name, but they felt familiar. They were angelic. They were peaceful. And they communicated not with words but with feelings, with thoughts. Welcome. You're home now. Come. I could feel their presence and their love, and it was the most real thing I had ever experienced in my entire existence. But then I looked back. I looked back at my life, and everything unfolded before me like a movie I couldn't pause. I saw how I had treated people. I saw the toxicity, the anger, the lies, the manipulation. I saw how I used people, how I made promises I never kept, how I drank and drove, how I took advantage of anyone who tried to help me. I saw all the pain I had caused. I watched it from childhood all the way up to the night of the crash, and it was devastating. I saw my son, my firstborn, and I saw how I was about to leave him behind, how I was going to become nothing more than a sad story he'd carry for the rest of his life. Uneducated, illiterate, a bully, a failure. That's the man his father was going to be remembered as. The shame hit me like a wave, the guilt, the regret. What did I do with my life? What did I live for? I started thinking about what I could have done differently, what I should have done, what I would have done if I had the chance. But in the middle of all that pain, something incredible happened. I was not judged. I was not condemned. I was not punished. Those beings, that light, that presence, they simply said, "It's okay. That was your journey. You're home now." But there was a question. A massive angelic being, something I can barely describe, raised its presence toward me, and I felt the question before it was spoken. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay here? You're home. You're forgiven. Or do you want to go back? I didn't know what was waiting for me if I went back. I didn't know if I was paralyzed, brain damaged, or if I would ever walk or talk again. I didn't know if life would be harder than anything I had already endured. But something in me, something deeper than fear, deeper than pain, said go back. I choose to go back. There was a pause, and then I felt the question again. Are you sure? I took one last look at that light, at that peace, at everything I had ever wanted without knowing it. And I said yes, I'm sure. And just like that, I was pulled back. Back through the light, through the darkness, through the tunnel, faster and faster. I saw the atmosphere, the clouds, the landscape rushing toward me. And then I was back in my body. My eyes were closed, but I was conscious. I could feel everything. I could hear my family's prayers. And at that exact moment, the very moment I came back, my mom had just made the decision to unplug me. She had pulled the plug. And then I moved. But here's the thing nobody tells you about coming back from the other side. I didn't come back as a changed man, not right away. I came back with the same anger, the same resentment, the same bitterness. I tried to lift my hand and it just fell. I couldn't move my leg. I looked up and saw my mom and my sister, and instead of feeling grateful, all I felt was rage. All the abandonment, all the neglect, all the years of pain, it was all still there. I didn't want to see them. I wanted to scream at the world. I wanted to call everyone out on every lie they ever told me. I had no idea how to express what I had learned in a calm or constructive way. I was more intense than ever, but the journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. I had to learn how to walk again. I had to learn how to talk again. My voice was gone. I had a lisp. I was slurring my words. And weeks later, just when I thought the worst was behind me, they found bleeding in my brain. Another surgery. Another life or death decision. They drilled into my skull while I was awake. They couldn't give me anything for the pain for 3 to 4 hours after. I felt every second of it. And somewhere around the 3rd hour, when the suffering became unbearable, my spirit left my body again. I floated through the hospital one more time, just looking around, just breathing in that peace I had felt before, until the nurse called me back and told me they could finally give me something for the pain. It took everything I had to rebuild my life, but something had shifted, even if I didn't understand it yet. I learned how to change my patterns, how to pay attention to the cycles I kept repeating. I taught myself how to forgive, not just others, but myself. I learned what love actually means, what letting go actually feels like. I healed my body in ways the doctors said were impossible. I walked out of that hospital in 6 days when they said it would take months. I took myself off every pharmaceutical they had me on. I got my criminal record cleared. I published a book. I became someone my son could look up to. Everything I wasted in those first 23 years I made up for. I rewrote my story. And I did it because I was given a second chance by something bigger than me, something I still can't fully explain. All I know is that I was dead, and then I wasn't. And the life I came back to was nothing like the one I left.